So in preparation for our panel discussion, we will be welcoming on stage Mr. Mark Keeley, who is the healthcare expert and Chief Executive Officer of Ontario Pharmacists Association. Today's topic will be discussed detailed over the Zoom meeting, and also we will have Dr. Ahmed El-Sohimi featuring nutrigenomics, Dr. Rafiq Rogab featuring inflammation, Dr. Bruce J. Holub, which will be joining us online. He's the pioneer of omega-3 theoretical research, founder of the DHA EPA Omega-3 Institute. He's the University Professor Emeritus, Department of Human Health and Nutritional Sciences at the University of Guelph, and the President of Nutrition Society of Canada. Dr. Stephen Newmaster will be also online joining us. He is featuring in Genomics Metabolomics Professor at the University of Guelph, and Dr. John Shi, who is the Functional Nutrition and Processing. So we're almost getting ready for the panel discussion. All right, please put your hands together for Mr. Mark Keeley.
So, all right, it's been a long day. How's everybody doing? You fine? Okay, there's been a lot of information here today. And I'm grateful that you all attended and you were, you provided applause when you needed to, and that you were extraordinary in your attentiveness as well. I thought we had a great faculty today, and I think it's smart of us to have the panel discussion and leave it to the end. And I'm hopeful that we'll have a very rich discussion. So if I could, to invite, I wonder if Ahmed and Rafiq and Pierre, is John here too, and Bruce? If you guys could come up to the stage and sit under these chairs. Could you do that? I also, and I want to, I'm really grateful too that we have MP Kevin Wong here. And Kevin, why don't you come up too? Because I think it's really important that you're here today. And John, good to see you. Good, yes, John. Why don't you grab the tea? Where is, where's Pierre? I saw it.
Dr. Pierre inside, ask them. Okay.
And Rafiq, I saw Rafiq earlier on today too. He's, oh, there he is. Grab one of those chairs, Rafiq. All right. Here, grab a seat. Okay. Here's how this is going to go. We have about 40 minutes to do this. So I'm going to beg your indulgence. I'm going to make a few opening remarks. Sorry my back is to you, but I want to challenge you as panelists today too. I hope you're okay with that. And MP Wong, I want to leave you to the end to make some comments. Can we do that? Let me start out by making a few comments. I'm not only proud to be a member of the board of ACPN, but I think I've got probably good credentials to be the moderator for today. We do an awful lot of work in health public policy, not only here in Canada, but globally. And the reason I wanted you to know this, especially you, Kevin, is that there is something very unique about Canada's healthcare system. Do you know that anywhere you go in the world, they will look at Canada's healthcare system as the most quality healthcare system on planet Earth? We're very, very fortunate that we have this as a unique selling proposition. I'm also grateful, because I've done probably about 20 years of work in China, that China, in particular, loves anything health-related. And do you know why? Because of one thing and one thing only. Norman Bethune. Nobody in this room knows who Norman Bethune is. Nobody in Canada who knows who Norman Bethune is. But everybody in China knows Bei Shuan. Everybody in China knows Norman Bethune. And he is, there are 500-foot-high statues to this gentleman in China. And I got to tell you, the work that we've done has said our most unique selling proposition as Canada is to offer healthcare-related issues in China after his name. So I'm grateful that China and Canada have that extraordinary relationship. So thank you very much for those who know who Norman Bethune is, and you too. All right. You all know the panelists today because you got to hear from all of them today. And I don't know if we're going to have the other panel member on Carrie, is anybody else coming on the Zoom?
Yes.
How are we going to do that?
Zoom, please. 可以连接了吗？高导，高导在场吗？
So Dr. Stephen's going to come on, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So look, I'm going to, no, I need this.
Young reporters.
Where are the young reporters? Are they coming up here? Are you coming up here, our young reporters? We've got... Oh my heavens, it's half the room.
Yeah, we have this room.
Okay, we've got chairs for all of you.
Yeah, they would not very interested to join us.
All right, come on up here. Isn't this great?
Yeah. Follow me.
Before, as we get our young reporters seated, I just wanted to give an absolute incredible shout out to the volunteers for today, and also to Thomas and Carrie, who put on a wonderful, wonderful show. So thank you very much to our volunteers and to Thomas and Carrie. Thank you. I also want to, listen, you guys, your questions were great. Yours was a fantastic question. Thank you very much. Yours was a fantastic question. The questions that all of you asked today were really, really intuitive. We have a panel of experts here, and these folks are very, very widely regarded in this field of nutrition. So what I wanted to do today was to offer a few comments and then challenge each of you, because you had the opportunity to speak today. And I think it's really important that as we go forward, that today is National Nutrition Day, that you have an opportunity to sort of enlighten further. So you all know Dr. Ahmed, right over here. So Doctor, I'm going to challenge you a little bit. You all know Dr. Rafiq. You all know Dr. Pierre. You all know Dr. John. And we're going to get an opportunity to talk with Kevin afterwards. But let me start with you, Dr. Ahmed. Your remarks today, I thought, really add a lot of pith and substance in terms of what we need to know about nutrition. We're at a stage right now where we need to look at how do we go down the path of getting people to understand the value of taking control of nutrition without being overwhelmed by information.
Well, I mean, I think there's what you can call maybe low-hanging fruit. You know, some of the obvious things that I think Lucia touched on, the 3 S's, the sugar, sodium, saturated fat. While we all respond differently based on our genetics, and not all of us need to make the same kinds of changes, these are things that generally, for the majority of the population, these are things that are kind of prudent measures that one can take just to improve their overall quality of life. When it comes to other aspects of the diet in terms of supplements, should I take a supplement or not? more is not better by any means. So some people think, oh, well, you know what, I'll just take a vitamin supplement just as insurance. Well, there's a lot of evidence that in some cases and some individuals, that might actually cause harm. So as we begin to learn more and more about how each individual responds differently, and we're able to develop better precision nutrition strategies, again, I think we can look at just the basic prudent things of eating more whole foods, whole grains, cutting back on the refined carbohydrates and the processed foods. But when it comes to kind of taking it to the next level of understanding our own individual biochemistry, I think we do need to look at, the latest science and the latest advances and how that can help us reach that higher level of optimal health and wellness.
And so how do, as a corollary to that, how do nutritionists fit themselves into what we affectionately call here in Canada the family health team? How do you see a nutritionist being very much a part of that, knowing that we have regulated health professions in dietitians, for example?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that is a great question and a difficult one, I think, to answer because, some of it comes down to affordability. And obviously, we're in a time now where, the global economy, let alone Canada's, is kind of teetering on recession, and people are struggling with even just food insecurity, just getting adequate amounts of food on the table. So in terms of discretionary funding, what people choose to spend their money on, a lot of these services are not covered by OHIP. And so I think we really do have to, kind of press our elected officials. And I'm sure we'll hear from
we have one
afterwards, but not to put them in the hot seat. But
yes, you do.
Just recently, just last year, OHIP started covering testing for celiac disease. It was never tested before, or at least you had to pay out of pocket, $60 to $80. For some of us, that's not a big deal, but for others, that's amount of money that they can't afford to pay. And about 90% of cases of celiac disease are undiagnosed, and it's partly because people can't afford to pay for testing. So ultimately, I think we need to look at our system and recognize that nutrition is so fundamental to overall health, and it's an investment that is absolutely worth every penny, and we need to do that on a much larger scale.
That is a great answer. Thanks very much. Rafiq, let me go right to you. You talked today about, and I think it's a corollary based on what Ahmed just talked about, with respect to things like the food we eat. People are scared. You talked about inflammation and cytokines in your speech. First of all, my question to you is, what the heck is a cytokine? Why should we care? And how does what we eat, or how could you give some really decent advice based on what you talked about today so that people don't get inflammation when they eat?
Back to Dr. Ahmed, he mentioned actually the genetic basis. So we have to understand nutrients or synthetic products will get into the cell and make changes. And this basically expressed at the gene level that will produce proteins. Among those changes is the pathways of different cytokines. And this is concerning inflammation. The science behind this one is very intense, complex, and evolving as well. However, because of the technology, we were able actually to decipher and clear out the role of some of those, what we call it, biomarker cytokines. And here in Canada, we are evolving with that approach. At the level of my lab, actually, I implemented this technology. There is, as I mentioned, many others as well. But because of the integrity of the technique we use, we were able actually to get approval at the Ministry of Health, Health Canada approval, CAP approval as well. So it tells us actually the importance of the cytokines, or what we call it the immunomodulatory mediators or immunoregulators in general. This is fundamental. When it gets actually to the public, like to generalize this at the level of the public, we have to understand that there is many pieces here. It is the role of the scientists as well as the educators and the patients as well.
Yeah.
So the patients or the public, they have to understand that, as Dr. Ahmed mentioned, not everything is free. There will be actually non-covered tests, and we can see from Dr. Pierre here as well. There is many tests, folic acid, just to mention a few, I guess B12 now are non-OHIP covered. And so we have to realize, and back to you as well, Mark, we are talking about actually health investment. So when it gets to health investment, you have to look to yourself. At the end of the year, you spend on car, and the mechanic will tell you, you spend $1,000 to change whatever, correct? And you're silent, you just pay the bill. So let it done. So definitely we have to get into this level. It is a high caliber. We are privileged actually to be here in Canada. We have the system. The quality, definitely improvement is ongoing all the time.
Yes.
However, actually, with what we have in terms of integrity of research as well, we have to translate this into facts, into privileges for the public. Public, in general, patients, they don't know too much about the research. If you don't actually implement a method which is crucial and vital for them, we are missing. And if I go back to your question specifically as well about the cytokines actually is known many years ago. However, there is not much attention till we came across actually the cytokine storm during COVID. And of course, the science is evolving at so many levels as well. We get to know it's not just diabetes. There is many others, arthritis, many diseases related to inflammation. And what actually is so intriguing as well, which is so important in that end, is Health Canada approval. Health Canada approval for some medication, what we call it biologics.
Yes.
If we run to a physician, and those I'm talking about the specialist, not the primary care, and we ask them, do you have a metric to measure cytokines, inflammation level? The answer is no. It's not generalized. So this is a wake-up call, actually, and this is the reason, actually, for instance, Ministry of Health is paying a lot of attention, and we get into this step. We are unique, and we added, actually, a cytokine test panel under the umbrella of Ministry of Health. So this is how important it is. Do you know how much, actually, we pay, or government of Canada pay for diabetes?
Tell me.
I don't know. You tell me.
That's a very good point.
It's a huge, in billions of dollars. So
Yeah.
now we are talking about preventive medicine. Of course, it is a collaboration effort among scientists at the genomic level, at the proteomic level, at the analytical level as well, to move on and to decipher this to the public. But the public as well, they have to come back, and
Right.
they pay from their own pocket as well.
Right.
So it is education.
Yes. You and all of your colleagues on this stage talked about the tsunami known as diabetes, type 2 diabetes. You all talked about it. And I want to ask this as a corollary to you, particularly given the answer we got from Mohammed earlier on. I'm going to tease this out of all of you, so just be ready to answer this question. Nutritionists are an important part of this. You talked about the research that you do. Ahmed, you talked about the work that you're doing as well. How do you ensure that in a world that you talked about complexity, that how do we ensure that nutritionists is part of the family health team?
I think ideally it is a practice. They have to get going. Integration is the key as well. And there is a lot of changes like in our system. So dietitians are important. Primary care is important. Nutritionists are important. We have to come up with the Holo, basically, approach. Rather than actually, I'm specialized in this, and this is my area. We have to have the whole approach. Collaboration is a key word as well for it. If there is no collaboration, I think we are missing a lot as well.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, Pierre, let me move to you. I'm going to go along here, so I hope you're okay. We're going to get to you last, Kevin. So you're going to go before anybody after I hit Pierre, John. Pierre, you made a very interesting presentation, and you scared all of us with what you said. I think, no, you talk about, oh, here's what happened to me in Florida, but you scared us. Everybody in this room is scared by what you said. How do you help us not be so afraid of food and nutrition by the work that you do?
Well, my job is to basically generate the information for the nutritionists or naturopathic doctors to use to help their patients. And what I tried to present today is what I see. I see probably 40% of the people are dehydrated. They're not drinking enough liquids. Their sodium potassium levels are through the roof. So there's issues there. There's issues with that selenium I talked about. I'm very concerned about selenium. And as we get older, and I'm one of the older guys here, we don't absorb it in our diets to start with. And what we do absorb is not sufficient. So I take selenium supplements. And because I'm older, I'm taking more than the normal supplement. To get to the levels I believe, is the optimum for good health, production of glutathione, the immune system. So that's where I get excited. I find there's lots of oxidative stress out there. I looked at 100 samples yesterday or Friday, and it probably had 5 or 6 people with extremely high iron. And that worries me because that's something which is telling me these individuals have got a problem. Where I see things could improve is making the Ministry of Health allow labs to deal with nutritionists. Right now, a nutritionist cannot order a lab test. A naturopathic doctor does, a medical doctor does, chiropractor, but not nutritionists. And I think there's a real role for nutritionists in the whole healthcare system. I was showing extremes on what we see, sodium, potassium, and so forth, but there's a lot of malnutrition, malabsorption. So where you see all the elements are low. So this person is not absorbing properly, gut issues. And these are things that a nutritionist can help resolve. So there's a real role, and I believe the Ministry of Health should allow certified nutritionists to get some lab tests to help the patients they're dealing with.
Okay, and you pretty much answered the second question I was going to ask about that too. So I'm going to ask you this question because you talked a lot about it, and I'm going to use this as a preface. I was in a place in China called Shenyang. Okay, in Shenyang, they drink selenium tea in Shenyang. And people live to be about 109 in Shenyang. And they're attributing it to selenium tea. So how do you justify your comments about selenium being a toxin when people in China are living very active lives to 109?
Well, there's what you call in the world blue zones, which are the areas where people live long lives, and in a lot of these places there's no medical care to speak of, and I believe there's things in the diet there that prevent some of the diseases of old age, and a lot of that is cancer. Most of these blue zones are in areas that are very volcanic. So some of the minerals that have been washed off our soils are brought up from the core of the earth in the volcanic areas. Good example is Naples. Naples is, I've been to Naples, it's a polluted city, it's an industrial city. It's on the mountainside of Vesuvius, the volcano. They grow beautiful vegetables there and beautiful gardens. And there's less cancer in this polluted city than there is in Rome, which is not on a volcanic area. So, you look Hawaii versus continental U.S., they have less cancers. So there's minerals that are coming up from the earth. And my thoughts are rubidium and cesium, which are like same family as sodium, potassium. The salts, they're soluble, you know, they wear off, they go into the ocean, and where you have volcanic area, this soil has these elements, rubidium and cesium, and they may have an effect on reducing cancers. So there's a lot we still have to learn, what these blue zones offer. But most of them are mountainous areas, volcanic areas, areas that there's minerals, lots of minerals where, you know, in cities, lots of our agricultural land. There was a paper published about the concerns Europeans have about the wheat. The wheat no longer has very much selenium in it. It's been farmed for 1,000 years, and the soil is depleted of selenium. So they're saying, the wheat, where we get some of our nutrition from, our elements, essential elements, no longer has selenium. We have the problem. In Canada. We have, the wheat basket, Manitoba, Alberta, Saskatchewan. They have lots of nice soil. It has selenium in it. So far, so good. But some of the selenium is not bioavailable. It's downwind from Alberta, the flaming of the sour gas lines. It is mercury coming up. Mercury binds the selenium. It's not bioavailable for the wheat. So there's problems there.
Super. Thanks. And thanks for scaring us all the time. I love that. I hope you guys feel that he helped to lessen the fear. So thanks, Pierre. Appreciate it. Dr. John, I'm going to move to you.
Okay.
If you take for a second what Pierre talked about in terms of the food we eat, and there were other comments made by panelists in their presentations today around supplements. And you talked a bit about efficaciousness of supplements. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. We know that. We also know that there's an awful lot of fear. Food labeling is one thing, even on the supplements that we take. How do we put ourselves in the position that we could trust the supplements that are available in the way that they're available right now?
Okay, thank you, Mark, and organize this panel discussion. I want to give some information about our research. And 5 years ago, we collected more than 100 nutrition products from supermarket. After analysis, 80% products is much less function as they are labeling discussion. 50% is no help for health. So what is this situation? The question is, so much products in the supermarket, consumer costs a lot of money, but they didn't get health function help. Just get the feeling is, oh, I get nutrition, health food. So in the world, functioning food, health food is a hard topic. A lot of food industry spend a lot of money emphasis to produce. But some key questions still not resolved. First one, stability. For example, from nutrition, chemical, they make a lot of analysis. What inside is good for health, what good for disease. But when they processing as food, a lot of compounds is gone, it's destroyed. In the final products, very little function nutrition compounds in the products. One question. Second question is absorption. In another words, is bioavailability. For example, we eat some compounds, some health food, but we eat not absorption, not absorbed by your digestive system. This means affect very little. So how to improve digestion? How to improve bioavailability? This is another big question, and we should pay more attention. Otherwise, more food, more health food, consumer less benefit. So from our research, we focus on two issues. One is from clean processing. Clean process technology make these nutrition compounds, health compounds is stable, not destroyed in the processing. First one. Second one, we develop micro-encapsulation or different emulsion, make these compounds, these products easier to absorption. Then customer can get really health benefit. So if these two questions not treated and very well in the processing, the function food, nutraceutical, health food still should have do more work. Even for example, from nutrition, health purpose, this compound is very good for health, it's good for raise your immune system and against cancer and against any disease, but not stable, not have good absorption. This means the benefit is very, very little. This is, I want to deliver this information for all of you. Thank you.
No, thank you. That was fantastic. I think I'm going to change my opinion about you, Pierre. You scare more people by that comment. So you're the guy that's scaring everybody. But the corollary is, Dr. John, before you move on, how do we build trust?
Yeah, this is one. So this means that a lot of products in the supermarket, you can buy it, but as consumer, we can't get really result as the product's information. So this is should ask industry have more research, more technology, and more processing. Then can guarantee us the product is good quality. So consumer can't decide which one is better because they have no ability to taste these products. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. John. See, before we get to our member of parliament, I want to put you on the spot. Before you went up to speak, I asked you this, we had this little discussion, and I'll tell you, I told Lucia that there was a study out of Maastricht University in Netherlands where they talked about the family physician. 70% of family physicians believe that nutritionists are really important to their patients. But less than 40% of them actually do anything to refer them to a nutritionist, which speaks to your point about how unaware we are about things like nutrition. You're a dietitian. You're registered. You're qualified to give advice on this. How do, and it goes back to the question I asked Ahmed, Rafiq, and to Pierre and John. How do we put ourselves in the position where there's, excuse the expression, but intervention on the part of people who know this so that it becomes part of the family health team?
Well, that's a great question, and thanks for the warning while we were sitting here. So I'll have a confession. I wasn't a registered dietitian when I started my passion in nutrition. I was a food scientist. I was a food chemist. And I felt that I had a lot to offer to the world of food and nutrition without my registration. I respected and learned from professors at the University of Toronto like Dr. Ahmed and participated in research and science, and I felt confident in my ability to contribute as a nutritionist. So you do have a role to play. When I started my consulting practice, I felt that I needed more credibility to deal with the public, with the consumer. And you mentioned about the Canadian regulatory and healthcare system, which is #1 in the world. And that is what Canadian regulators are putting at the table, is that they want to regulate and protect the public through certain licensed healthcare professionals. And it's the same with trades, like an electrician, they have a license, the public is protected. So the registration of a dietitian has everything to do with liability and protection of the public. It's not that they know that much more, but they could be hauled in front of their colleagues. Their license could be suspended if they breach the public trust with their advice. So this is protects the public, but in some ways restricts dietitians from offering perhaps innovative and very future-focused art of nutrition, because the regulated profession is guiding what is mainstream science. So there are pros and cons. I would say that in my leadership role with dietitians and teaching nutrition professionals, so I teach food service, and Canadian Nutrition Society, for example, works in healthcare, and they manage a lot of long-term care areas. So they have credibility, and they have an association where they are accountable to their peers, not regulated by the government, but in a different way. So that may be an option for you. Or look at other jurisdiction where, let's say, there are in the US accredited dietary aides, who have some role to play. So you can maybe merge your expertise with a form of public protection that you create, where you feel that this may be an option recognized by the healthcare. But it's a tough situation, and being an unregulated profession, the credibility from the public is something that may not be where you'd like.
Do you believe that that especially nutritionists should become regulated?
I think it would benefit the profession if there was some regulation where there would be credibility. I think it's the credibility from the public and the public protection. And I think having a nutrition designation that could be like a 1-hour online certificate versus a comprehensive training at an accredited institution, I think they could be differentiated. Yeah.
Super. Okay, thanks. I'm going to do this. I'm going to go to you, Kevin. I'm going to put you on the spot, and you're used to that. You get this all the time. But I want to give you a bit of a shout out and some congratulations. You're a member of a government that has been very innovative over the last 7 years in terms of things like, and I'll use this as an example. You as a member of Parliament, you sit in the House of Commons. It's the highest court in the land. Your job is to make laws and to protect people. Our Prime Minister the other day talked about the notion that the government's role is to keep people safe. And I think you agree with that. I've seen things come out of your government in particular, like committees on how we deal with issues like diabetes. you've actually got a committee, a parliamentary committee that's dealing with this, and I think you should be applauded for that. So given that you're doing all of that work, given that, I'm just going to say this, there's a bit of a, some people are challenging your government saying you're not putting enough money into innovation. And given what Lucia just said and the scary thing that Dr. John just said, how do you as a parliamentarian make sure that Canadians feel safe that what you're doing in Ottawa through Health Canada is actually making good progress to keep people safe for the food that they're eating?
Sure, thanks. So I'm going to start by saying how great it is to be here. And I think it says a lot about the vital work that this organization does at ACPN to have a health leader like Mark here today to moderate this panel. There's a few things that I want to say, and I think one of them is if you zoom out and you look at how much as a country across both federally and the province, we spend $308 billion on healthcare for Canadians. And I think pharmacists are a key part of that health system, but so too are nutritionists, dietitians, because a lot of that, you know, what we eat ultimately impacts our health. And you've obviously heard that over the course of today from all of the great research here. And so I wonder, as we take a look at the ongoing challenges that we're reading about, that we're hearing with healthcare now, as proud as we can be of our system, we know that there's more that can be done. And I think having ACPN and all of the people that are part of your organization who's playing a vital role in our health system further formalized is a good thing. I'll cross for a moment into provincial jurisdiction. I think it should be explored in how OHIP can play a role ensuring that Canadians have that holistic health wellness approach. Federally, I think a good place to start is looking at how can Canadians have, if we have to invest our own money to get the professional help that we need, to have the tax deductions. I think that's a good place to start. And like Mark has said, I think the government has explored a number of different avenues. I think this is some of the low-hanging fruit that we can start with to ensure that we're continue to contribute to the overall view, the holistic approach to our health.
You've got some extraordinary, I'll just say professionals, healthcare professionals here on this stage. Would it be, and you know, two of the words that we talk about at ACPN are innovation and collaboration. Would it be something that would be ideally beneficial to you as a parliamentarian and your colleagues to get these guys on a panel or a task force talking to them often about the kinds of things you just raised?
100%, without a doubt.
Well, I'd like to challenge you back to say I think you should do that, because I think all of these people would say, I'll participate. I know you would, Ahmed, for sure. So, but I think that would be an ideal thing for the government to take advantage of, because this brain trust really wants to help.
Yeah, and I can tell you, as a member of both the anti-poverty caucus, but also that there's an all-party caucus on diabetes, that I think what I've heard today and in my conversations with different people here are things that I intend to bring back to be able to share with my colleagues at Parliament.
Thank you, Kevin. Okay, before we break up, we've got our ACPN reporters here. And I'm going to give you an opportunity. This is the only time that these guys are going to sit here and they can't leave. Does anybody want to ask any of them a question? Okay, watch this. Ask it.
Okay, thank you very much. So my name is Victoria and I have a question for all of the panelists. So today we had hours worth of presentations by all of you guys. We've learned stuff like leadership, how we should reduce saturated fat, sodium, sugars, but we also shouldn't restrict too much or else we'll binge. And heavy metals are horrible for us. Omega-3 is really important. It's important to manage stress. Magnesium is very important. some of us have too much iron or zinc. There's so much information, and honestly, I feel quite overwhelmed with the diversity. And I remember one person said, it's always important to take the smallest step, even like if anything, because I don't think any of the audience can go home and follow every single thing, because that'd be so overwhelming. So any of you guys, when we go home, what do you think is the first step we can do to improve our nutrition overall?
Yeah, that's a brilliant question, by the way. And I wish I could say the simple thing to do is go home and take a genetic test, but I won't say that. A simple thing, I think, is to, again, I think one of the speakers mentioned, kind of look at your pantry and look at some of the things that you recognize are probably not healthy food choices. So if you're preparing your own lunch for school tomorrow and you're looking at, what to pack as a snack, you have options. And, given all that you heard today, and probably even if you hadn't heard all of this, you probably recognize, potato chips, cookies, apples, carrots. You can probably weigh what's better than the other. And it doesn't mean you have to go cold turkey and just cut out everything, because as we heard earlier, that's probably not going to work. It's not going to be sustainable. But I think, set yourself some targets. Even if you say, okay, Mondays and Wednesdays, I'm going to go for, something green as opposed to something that's packaged and tastes delicious. And just those small steps, and eventually you'll develop those habits and improve your overall eating habits that way.
Yeah, I agree as well with Dr. Ahmed. So the same thing as well, I think there is a key word, moderation. So you basically have the preference to select, but use moderation and be wise. It is your health. The second point I would make, be organized as well with your selection. So distribute it in a way that you have a metric for yourself. You have indicators to measure at the self level. That's all, I guess. Yeah.
Great,
thank you.
Scary Dr. Pierre?
If I was to look at things that are making a difference, easy things, omega-3, most of us are deficient. So if you want to optimize your body, 400 milligrams every day, total between EPA and DHA, it's going to change your life. 800 is even better. The other thing is we don't drink enough liquids. I think one of the nutritionists mentioned that. I see it because I see the results. Your sodium and potassium is too high. It's too concentrated. You don't have enough fluids in your body. So that's another one. If you're over 50, like Jim is out there, should be taking selenium supplements. If you're young, you probably don't need as much, but I think that's an important one. And the other one is vitamin C. I think we underestimate the value of vitamin C, but when we have stress in our systems, the iron gets high, you get oxidative stress in your system. Vitamin C is what you need. So I think those are the simple things we can do to keep our engines going till we're 100.
What a great question, and you remind me of Alia in my stories. So as a dietitian, I have 3 tips for you. 1, have a good relationship with food. We love food, let's keep it that way. Don't be scared of it, don't be restricting, enjoy your food, have a good relationship with food. Number 2, Health Canada recommends making half your plate vegetables and fruit. So this is really easy to implement. It's not a supplement, it's what you eat every day. So when you're cooking or putting your dinner plate together or whatever, draw a line halfway down your plate and half of it arrange for fruit. First vegetables and fruit. Doesn't matter what kind, the more color the better. Quarter protein, quarter high fiber starch. So that's Number 2, very visual, half your plate vegetables. Number 3, reduce the 3 S's, right? We all know about that. Saturated fat, sodium, and added sugars. Look for the less in those. And boost your fiber. So those are the 3 tips, okay?
Dr. John?
Okay. A lot of information on the expertise already provided for our discussion. But my major is for processing, function food processing and nutraceutical processing, health promoting food processing. For my research point of view, how to benefit from the consumer. One question is, we should use different low temperature and processing to keep all health promoting compounds stabilized, first one. Second one is how to make these health promoting compounds easier to absorption and available for our body. So this means we should consider how their absorption through our digestive system. So this should for processing, nutrition, and work together. Make this really this health food good for health. But this still have a long way to go. But now industry realize for real health benefit from consumer, they should do more. Then can make people have better health. This is condition in the food process area.
Thank you. That was a good question. Before we move on to the next question, if you don't mind, I'd like to maybe add a corollary to your question and for you, Kevin. So one of the things that this young reporter had suggested was that she feels overwhelmed with information that's out there. Your government right now is looking at trying to, I'm going to use the capital R word, regulate what's out there on the internet, on social media and other platforms. What kinds of things do you think would help to add less fear to the kinds of questions you heard from this young reporter about the information that's out there in public?
It's an interesting question. I mean, yes, it's true. We are going through the process of figuring out how do we ensure that the internet continues to be a place for constructive, safe dialogue so that we can learn without fear of being harassed or worse. And unfortunately, it continues to be an ongoing challenge. I think I can tell you from my own experience, one of the things that I've tried to prioritize is creating the appropriate space to speak to people at the level that they want. And so that means using terms that actually connect with individuals that might be, government is often quite guilty of using jargon, right? And so I think one of the things could be helping to really communicate in the language that people and at the place where people are. So social media being one easy avenue, but not everyone is there. I know a lot of members from the Chinese community use WeChat, communicating with people there. Others, I can tell you there are seniors in my community who use mail, communicating with them there and providing with the resources that they need in the language that they both understand and can help them to put in practice a lot of the great things that we're hearing today.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, before I get on to, look at this. This is technology at its finest. We have one of our esteemed panel members who's on the phone. Dr. Steve, how are you?
wish I was there with you.
Well, we wish you were here too. Can you hear him? Can you hear Dr. Steve? I've got the microphone right by the, can you hear? Where is it? Turn this up, Carrie. So
Very well.
okay, so let me just do this. We had a very rich discussion. All of us were scared by some of the comments made by some of the panel members. And we have a member of parliament here, as well as a group of young reporters who are asking very probative questions. Why don't you give us 2 minutes on what you think the role of a nutritionist could be, especially with the experience that you have.
Sure, sounds good, Mark. The work that we do is looking at the ingredients that are used in supplements, natural health products, to see whether or not they're actually what they say they are on the label. And it's work that we've been doing at the University of Guelph and the NHP Research Alliance for over a decade now. And unfortunately, sometimes those ingredients that are on the label aren't in the product. So one thing that nutritionists can do, consumers can do, is look for those companies that actually test to make sure that what they're sourcing and what's on the labels is actually verified and is in the product. And not all companies do this at different levels of testing. And I'll just give you an example. We use genomic test to be able to identify the identity of a specific species in a product. And say it's ginkgo biloba, we can look for ginkgo DNA. The other thing we can do is look at those active phytochemicals, the chemicals the plant makes, and make sure that they're in the product. And more than that, look at the metabolomic fingerprint to see if those metabolites are in the product, and they're the same every time. And we've heard some comments today on the panel about consistency in a product and also longevity, so a shelf life, and to understand dose. And that can be tested through metabolomic fingerprint. So these things are important. These are things we can do. One comment I'll just add, because one of the reporters, young reporters, asked what can we do to improve our nutrition. And one thing I would add, and it's something that I do, is mixing nutrition with activity, sports. Just getting out a little bit and at the same time thinking about what nutrients am I going to take while I'm out, and I'm out in the field actually right now, so that I have a healthy day. I have proteins for building muscle, I have carbohydrates to give me energy, I'm taking lots of moisture. So the mixture of activity and sports with food is a very important thing to consider as well.
Super. Thank you very much, David. That's great. And that certainly captures some of the things that you said earlier on as our panel of experts. I want to give an opportunity to some of our young reporters to ask a question. I've got one right over here. Get ready. Okay.
Test. Hello, my name is Claire. I'm another one of the ACPN Young Reporters. In many of your presentations, I noticed kind of a common theme, which is personal responsibility, right? You have to go out by yourself, take action to your own health by doing things such as, seeing a nutritionist, getting planned diets for yourself, seeing the doctor, et cetera, and also restricting your junk foods and choosing what works for you. All of this takes a lot of effort. However, I don't think it's any coincidence that I think one of the presentations mentioned that around 70 to 80% of people in the US are overweight, right? If everyone had this sort of personal choice and personal responsibility, I think that people still have somewhat of an incentive to eat healthy, but I'm also not shocked at the percentage of overweight people in the US, since there are a lot of corporations that try to advertise to you. They push so many different products to you, oh, I want to come buy our product, this tastes really good, with a lot of colors. So in regards to this, what would your opinion be on, should nutrition be purely in the hands of the individuals to take care of, or should there be policies set in place to benefit everyone and make sure that everyone is able to get kind of the nutrition they need? These policies can look, for example, education. I think some countries have even reduced the portion size. What are your opinions on this?
Super. That's a great question. Let's start with you, Dr. John. Scare these people.
放射是你就说的过，放进 food, it has food. Now the key question now is absorption. Industrial products, a lot of things health food. Because this is a hard topic. But these products in the shelf, a lot of compounds of oxidation, degradation during the time. So how to make their stability during the shelf life or during the processing is the key question. Now for the food industry, you develop non-thermal processing. This means is low temperature processing. And keep all bioactive compounds has promoted compounds as natural condition. Keep their natural property. One thing. Another is how to improve the absorption. For example, lago bean from tomato is good for health. But if you eat raw tomato, fresh tomato, just as fruit, very little benefit. Because we eat tomato, the key question is chemical as lago bean. Lago bean against cancer and improve your immune system. Oh, in lago bean is the most rich source is tomato. Another fruit vegetable, very little. So if you eat this tomato as a fresh tomato, raw tomato, absorption is very little. How does this work? You should cook, pour some oil together. It's easy to absorption. This is just an example. A lot of things we should do to improve absorption. This means that we increase absorption, make these health promoting compounds and absorption by our body, and have function in our body. Another question, when we eat our food, not only one, always mixed together. So this is in our processing point of view, this synergistic effect for health promoting. For example, if you eat tomato, you should eat meat together. And also vitamin E, for example, lago bean with vitamin E, vitamin C, then can promote your absorption. So from food point of view, we should eat more mixture, not only one. Then we can have increase your absorption, increase functionality for health purpose. These are our suggestions.
Okay, that's a great answer. I hope you maybe you learned from Lucia earlier on that noodles are the #1 choice of food. And what do you eat with noodles? Spaghetti sauce. There you go. Cook your tomatoes. That was your answer. Lucia, you got an answer?
Thank you. And I'll add to that. When you have spaghettis or noodles, what are you supposed to do with them? What's going to be on half your plate with your noodles? Vegetables. That's right. And tomato sauce sort of counts, but I'd go for more.
But it's absorption. See, you're not listening. He's talking about absorption.
Well, first it's intake, and then it's absorption. If you don't take it in, then it can't be absorbed. So step number 1, put half your plate veggies. Great question about government versus responsibility. I think in my practice, it's both, really. I mean, it starts with the person, information, but many people know what they should do, but that should is hard to do. We learned from our speakers today the 80-20 rule, and this whole relationship with food is so important, and habit changing is hard. Access to healthy food is sometimes hard, depending on the environment that you're in, the family's financial situation. I work with food banks, and I can tell you that the number of visitors to food banks has increased a lot. And my role as a dietitian is to guide food banks on what is a most nutritious, a most nutrient-dense food to put and purchase for food bank recipients. So it is government, but it is choices that people make. And if you go back to the division of responsibility for feeding children, and you are under 18, so your parents are supporting you with food, it's their wisdom, their learning, and their opportunity to teach you what is going to be served and when, and it's your job to decide whether or not you're going to eat that. And working with your parents, with your families to eat in the best way that you can and ask for support when you need it is a teamwork to get you to a long and healthy life.
Great, thanks. Kevin, I do, based on the work that you're doing in anti-poverty, could you chime in too and give a response to this reporter's question?
Yeah, so, Mark talked a little bit earlier about how I think what government's role, and I agree with this, is to ensure that we're helping to provide safety and confidence to Canadians that what you're eating is safe. But also, at the end of the day, one of the best things about this country is you get to choose a lot of things, including you having the freedom to choose what you choose to eat. I think government's role is to help to ensure that, in addition to being safe, is that you know what nutrients or not that you're getting with what you're eating. A personal example, though perhaps counterintuitive to a lot of what you heard earlier today, is every country I like to visit, I like to try their McDonald's. Okay, just because I want to see what is their unique dish. Macaroons in France and weird things that we don't have here. Weird, unique, rare delicacies. If you go and you order the same Big Mac and fries in the US versus a Big Mac and fries in Europe, the portions are significantly smaller. They are not as salty and they are not as sweet. So I think it's a good balance in terms of the role that government can play without limiting an individual's freedom to be able to choose what you decide to eat.
Great, thank you. Dr. Beaumier?
I think what you brought up, personal responsibility is important. But we've heard today that when people are given their lab tests, they do take responsibility. They implement diets better as opposed to going at it blindly. So, the more testing, the more dietitians getting involved with the testing, with their patients, I think will help the general public. If somebody is obese, they know they're obese, but they don't know what's happening inside. The detrimental parts of what's happening to them. But when they see a report with all these big red lines, they say, oh, I better do something about this. So I think that's one aspect of taking that personal responsibility is really getting a real look at yourself as opposed to saying, well, I'm a little overweight, but that's okay, because everybody else is. I think that makes a difference.
Thanks, Pierre. Repeat.
Yeah, sure. So basically, I agree with everyone here, but meanwhile, I add one thing. So back to the holistic approach, government actually has a role in terms of actually making sure there is regulations for the product basically we have available for us. But on the other hand as well, integration in terms of actually nutritionists work very closely with the health professionals. We are the one to do testing. We are the one to produce basically science and come up with findings to seek the routes actually to implement, so benefit basically from them. Otherwise, why we do the research? Why, so those are very integral, I think, points, and again, increase the collaboration levels among all of us.
Super, thank you.
Thank you.
Ahmed?
Sure. I just want to say that's a very mature and sophisticated question, and I'm all about free choices, and I think those are great, of course. But sometimes I think we might need some regulations to protect the most vulnerable, including those who perhaps because of poor education are not able to make those informed choices. Just as an example. Next time you're in the supermarket, go to the soft drink section and look at how much it costs for a small 200 ml can of Coca-Cola, and then look at the much bigger one. It's cheaper to buy the bigger one. So hardly anyone will go and buy that little one that kind of regulates your amount that you're consuming. Food industry is out to sell as much food as possible, to try to make you eat as much as possible. And as you heard from Kevin, the same restaurant like McDonald's in different countries have different portion sizes. You might be too young to remember a movie called Super Size Me, but it's probably on Netflix. Look it up. And sometimes some corporations have to be shamed into taking action. And so sometimes it happens in that respect, and other times perhaps policies might need to be implemented to at least make consumers aware of what the food industry is doing, because, and you can't blame them, they're a company and they are trying to make money and as much money as possible, but it's not in our best interest to always consume as much as we can. So I think the end of the day, definitely where you can get educated so you can make those informed choices for yourself, but at the same time, you can take an active role, a leadership role, when you see things that seem to be inequitable, and speak to your elected representative to say, hey, why is this happening? Why in this particular postal code with a certain low income do we find at the local store hardly any fresh fruits and vegetables, just canned and processed foods, whereas you find stuff more available in other food deserts, we call them, and those sorts of things. So perhaps consider taking that kind of leadership role to make some change.
Super, and we'll make sure that you get MP Wong's number after this so you could call him and inundate him with phone calls. Does anybody of our reporters want to ask a question? Anybody? Seeing none. Okay, look, we're getting to the point right now where we're winding up. Does anybody in the audience have a question they want to ask? Okay, there's a question right here. Come on over here. Don't be afraid. They're the ones that are...
Right. I have a question because we don't know what reports we should go by. All of a sudden, we know that the wine is no longer good. So not even, oh. My name is Judy Young. Okay, so if you watch a lot of news like I do, okay, CP24, CBC, CTV Newsnet, and even CNN, and a lot of time they give you different reports. All of a sudden, drinking wine is no longer good, not even half of a glass. Not too long ago, they said moderate, 2 for women or whatever number for men. And all of a sudden, if they go by that rule, you now feel that, oh my God, I've been drinking too much. So, and coffee was bad and now it's good. And tomato is supposed to be good and now it's bad. So we don't know what to do, right?
That's a great question. That's good. So, thank you very much, Judy. Dr. Ahmed, you have been the least punishing in terms of your responses, so you start.
Well, I think she may have missed my presentation this morning because I used that as an exact example, right? One day we hear coffee is good, one day we hear it's bad, right? And so I think you missed my presentation. There's a gene that can explain that. People metabolize foods differently. There's also a gene for the alcohol connection. And in some populations, moderate consumption of alcohol is protective. The evidence is overwhelming. But in other populations where they don't have as frequent that gene, you see that alcohol causes adverse effects. So the problem with a lot of these organizations and committees that look at the totality of evidence, they just look at the average number of publications on a particular topic and come to generalized and very safe conclusions. But at the end of the day, what the science, the emerging science is showing us unequivocally is in a lot of these cases, it does depend on the individual, and it's largely based on their genetics. But again, one of my slides said, how do we balance population-based recommendations with public health advice? And there is a balance, and I think sometimes, even with like coffee, the recommendations are everyone can consume up to 4 cups of coffee a day safely. Well, that's only good for half the population. For the other half, they need to limit to no more than 2 cups. So because not everyone has access to their genetic information, perhaps our guidelines should be reduced to be more prudent and to protect the more vulnerable, to say everyone can consume up to 2 cups a day. If you're lucky and you happen to know your genetics and you're a fast metabolizer, well, then go ahead and consume a little bit more. So it's all about the individual, and I think we're going to see more and more of that science. It just needs to take some time before it becomes accepted by the broader community and the guideline setters.
Great, thank you. Rafiq?
Sure, I agree as well. Meanwhile, I think we have to be careful about reports as well. We always seek the advice of the expert. So whatever the example you have, you have to seek that advice, since there is so many factors as well. It can get to the level of gene level that can influence many things. So it's not just the report. Go back to the science. So we do produce the science for a reason. We get novel ideas and novel, basically, findings. And the best one to advise you is the medical, basically, professional. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not sure I can add too much to what has been said, other than where you see a husband and wife, and I see the test from both, and you think they have the same meals and their profile is different. The individual they have different genes, but also inflammation of the gut will make a difference how you absorb things. So, until you test, then you really can't get a good picture of what's really happening.
Kevin?
I think the job of government is to listen to the experts, so I'm going to pass the mic. But I will say that I am missing the ability to process alcohol because I get the Asian flush. So I know I need to do more testing to better understand what I can or cannot process and absorb and so on.
Super good.
Excellent question. And as a dietitian, I can demonstrate the partnership of government and science in the case of alcohol. Health Canada was one of the first countries in the world to put out low-risk alcohol drinking guidelines, and you can go on your phones and find them. It's a powerful tool that gives you quantities and amounts for men and women. There is no amount of alcohol that's completely safe, so these are low-risk guidelines, okay? And back to what Dr. Ahmed said and what you just said here is that once the public health guidelines have been set, they are for the average population. It's not an individual guideline or recommendation. For that, you need to see a healthcare professional who knows you, who understands your situation, your health situation, your life situation, and can guide you with specific recommendations for your health. But without that, public health recommendations are a pretty good bet to go with for most people.
Okay, Dr. John?
Okay, I have some comments. For food for health, functional food, nutraceutical, and health promoting food. now is more popular by before. So how really make for people's health? We need a lot of things to do. But because food not individually, in my stomach always food mixed together. So from industry and from a person, we should get some knowledge. How this food interaction and make our more easy to for health, and also some mixed make this food not good for our health. This on both sides, for my consumer, we should get more knowledge how to choose the food. And for industry should also make material how to make together and easier to absorption and easier to have good health. For example, for consumer, if we have food, you should know what kind of food prepare, cooking, and good for health. For example, tomato. You should have oil and meat together and cooking. Then more likely, easy to absorption, good for health. Not from fresh food, fresh tomato. Example. Another thing, for example, we drink a lot of tea. Tea, a lot of polyphenols inside is very strong bioactive compounds. But for example, some food is rich in the oil. For example, and liver, pig liver and beef liver. They have a lot of organic iron. These food always interaction together. When we eat something, not pay attention to this food interaction, this function food, nutraceutical, and health food, no help for your health. So this is from consumer point of view, we should have more education. For example, today we have this conference. It's a good example to give every people have nutrition knowledge, how to make the food for your health, how to make your health life is one thing. Another thing is for industry, how to make this food is more health, easy to absorption, and easy to consume, get benefit. So this really we need more knowledge about food for health, food function, and food mixture and synergistic effect. So this kind of knowledge through our conference today, I think very helpful and useful. I think such a kind of conference is good for everybody and good for future.
Super, thank you. And Judy, I'll say this too, apropos to what Kevin said about his gene because he's Asian. My family comes from Ireland. We love potatoes, and we think that beer and wine is a food group. So there you go. Listen, I want to thank all of you for your attention today. And I really want to give a shout out to you panelists. I thought your comments were particularly fantastic, and I'm really, really grateful to all of you for participating. I want to thank you as the young reporter for ACPN. You did a superb job all day, and it really helped with National Nutrition Day, and I want to thank you on behalf of the panel for you being here and the questions that you asked. I want to say this too, because it's not very often that you get to spend an afternoon with a member of Parliament. So I do want to thank you, particularly Kevin, for being here today and for adding so much to this dialogue. I think it's important that you're here, but we know that you wanted to be here too, and that makes us feel very, very confident. So thank you for being here particularly. And thanks all of you for your attention.